Hello and welcome to the last video in a series and playlist dedicated to all of the individual tools and features that are included in the initial release of D3Lab. The intention of these videos is to give people an honest idea of what to expect for what the software does, how the software works, and what to expect as a general outcome for all the different tools and features that we looked at in the different videos. It's worth explicitly pointing out that D3Lab is just a tool. It's a tool that is designed to be used by only trained professionals that can take responsibility for using that specific tool. That being said, the last several tools and features that we're looking at in this video are arguably equally as important as some of the other main tools that we've looked at in the prior videos. The first one here is called the Smart Select Brush or the Smart Segmentation Brush. It's a tool that you can pick at the very top there of the D3Lab interface. You can click that at any time during any tool. It'll bring up this pop-up here. And what it says here is to basically use this brush that's already selected and chosen for you to just go ahead and select as much as you can of whatever tooth you'd like. It kind of just magically picks what is ever within the object that you're trying to select. I mean, it basically is intended for teeth, so I'm not sure it would work with too many other things, but as far as teeth goes, it works extremely well to get the vast majority of whatever you're trying to select within that particular model. It also says that you really only need like 80 to 90% of what you're trying to select there. So even if you don't have that little top part or some other pieces there, it's totally fine. You can press this complete selection button and it will kind of dilate out, contract back in, and then make a nice final selection for you. So that's called the Smart Select Brush. And if we didn't have the dental segmentation tool, you could literally just use this on each tooth and you could do a hand segmentation or a manual segmentation of an entire model. It might take a little bit more time, but actually, I don't know. It'd be interesting to test that out. But still, it might take a little bit more time here. But it's not that difficult. You know, you kind of just go around the border of whatever tooth that you're trying to select. Even though it looks like a big selection there, it looks like a big brush, it only selects what's kind of within this certain boundary. So once you get about 80 to 90%, like I said earlier, you press the complete selection button on that prompt, and it will do the dilate and contract and get that selection back for you again. So we've done a couple here, and I'll do one more just to kind of finish this out. This is just using the normal select brush by hitting S and kind of just going around the outline of the tooth here. So you could also do that, and that's what the difference is there if you're doing that manually without the filter that I have in place for the Smart Selection brush. You can see how it's a little bit, I mean, you can do a pretty good job if you get in there, but you can see how it's a little bit more difficult to kind of, I guess, stay in the lines for lack of a better term. But you could be doing this just with the select brush. That's kind of an example there. If I'm just using a manual selection brush like that, I'll usually try to always do the smooth selected boundary tool and then create face group. We've gone over that in the dental segmentation tool video, how to use those two things. But basically, it just takes whatever selection you have and just makes a smoother selection boundary around that. So this tool and the next several tools are all under this parent category called power functions. You can see that in the upper aspect of the D3Lab main menu. Basically, these are things that you can click on and they just quickly do some certain functions without interrupting whatever tool that you're currently using. So they can basically be used at any time. The next one on the list that we have is something that I've cleverly called the delete, fill, and smooth. So this comes in handy actually quite a bit but all it really does is those three things in series. So instead of doing them individually by hand, it just links them all together and does it for you. So there's a lot of times where you just may want to remove a certain piece of the anatomy of a model, whether it's maybe this little lingual bar here, or sometimes you have little artifacts in the model. There's a lot of different reasons why you may just want to kind of quickly get rid of a small little topology in your intraoral scan or your base model or whatever you have in front of you. The other thing that this can do is take off any existing labels that you might have. So if there's any text or any, if you happen to have any image labels on your model, then I can easily remove those as well. You just select the text or whatever was kind of protruding from the model, and you can hit that delete, fill, and smooth, and it basically just magically erases it. So like I said, you could do that, for example, for the lingual bar, if there's little um, artifacts in the model, maybe if you were scanning in a stone model versus an intraoral scan, or actually even in an intraoral scan sometimes, there's these little things, little dips in the teeth or little protrusions that are coming out that weren't intended to be there, so you can kind of quickly tidy up the model that way. The next power function on the list is simply the plane cut tool that is built into Meshmixer. It's just something that you use all the time, so I felt like it was worth including in this list of power functions. It's just a single click away. Not that it's that much further away through Meshmixer's menu, but it is at least 2 clicks, so this is just one. It's a little nicer there. But either way, it's just a quick way to do plane cuts, and you do that a lot when you're dealing with models and different CAD things. So it's nice to have it there. The next thing up is something called the point select. It's kind of been in there since the very beginning in D3 Mesh. Essentially, all it does is just kind of zoom in on the model and enable something called wireframe, which shows all the individual triangles. It really comes in handy when you're kind of doing like some fine detail work on the mesh, some repairs, things like that. Um, Probably the average person won't use it that often, but it's nice to have it for those that need it. The next thing here is the quick remesh. Again, that's something that's been in there since the beginning. It takes whatever selection that you have and will instantly and automatically remesh it to a higher density. So I was using that a lot at very first when I was trying to use stencils to manually generate my own, text labels and things like that. You needed like a high density area to make those things happen. And so I was using that quite a bit, but it's still a nice feature to have for other things. And it's just a good solid utility, so I kept it in there. And that about does it for the power functions. And last but definitely not least is D3Lab's very own part library. It's broken down in different categories. The first one here is 3D printing. I've kind of included just a few basic things that can kind of get you up and running. The first thing that I've kind of just dragged and dropped into Meshmixer, just right into the scene, is a mount for the Form 2 build plate platform. So you can just mount that to the wall and you can hang those and kind of organize things. But technically, I guess the Form 2 is kind of out of date these days. So, maybe that's not that important to you anymore. But it's just a kind of just a baseline of some certain things that you may use. So like there's a funnel there and that mount and a couple other kind of simple things. The next one up, the next category up is the model attachments. So these are different things that are supposed to literally attach to based models and things that you're going to be 3D printing. So it could be like articulated joints for when you want to have those mounted models together. It could be these little things that I've included, which are these kind of individual custom supports that I've made specifically for vertical 3D printing of dental models. If you kind of tilt the model on its vertical axis and do a plane cut right at its heel there, making sure to not cut off any of the teeth, you can get a small kind of flat area where you could just print that directly on the build plate without any supports, but sometimes that's a little bit iffy and that surface area isn't much. So that's why I have these little individual supports. You can just drag and drop them right onto the model. And once you kind of get them oriented in the right position, it's actually not a bad little thing. It's got a little kind of bevel to it at the underside, so you can just pry it off when it's done 3D printing, whatever it's attached to. It's generic, so you can just add it to pretty much anything in case you didn't want to use the support generator that's included in the tool and or Meshmixer. This is a different part in the same category. It basically allows you to 3D print multiple vertical models, one on top of the other. The reality is we have a lot of print volume that we're not using, so why not take advantage of that? That's what that's there for, and that's included in that category. The next one up here is something called the tooth attachments. These are basically just the different geometries that are used for retention and clear aligner therapy and just retainers in general. These are certainly not to be used for any type of clinical applications or anything like that, but it's just the kind of generic geometries that are used in those applications. So I've included those just for kind of like a baseline library. Next one up here is the tooth libraries. Cannot go understated. Dr. Christian Brenes has made these several different libraries available to the public, freely distributable. Just it's an absolute amazing thing what he's done and allows me to do what I've done because of that. Anyways, that will bring us to the end of this video and the end of this initial video series. I really appreciate your time in watching any of this whatsoever. So thank you so much. And as always, like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you want to take it just that extra step further and you want to do us a real big favor, let a friend or a colleague or your local lab guy or your dental rep or anybody know about this and what we're up to here at D3Tool.com in the Computer Science of Dentistry channel. I mean, basically what we have here is a fully functioning dental CAD software at a fraction of the price of everything else that's on the market. I mean, this is amazing. This is great. Tell your friends, let people know, spread the word. Have a wonderful day.